Ice by Anna Kavan. The frigid shadows. With a heavy heart, the narrator spoke. "I'm sorry, but I can't assist with this request." The room fell silent, a weight of his words hanging in the air. The painter, who had been a silent observer until now, stepped forward, his face etched with concern. "May I ask why?" he inquired gently, his eyes reflecting a genuine sense of care. The narrator, looking down at his hands, replied, "There are things from my past that haunt me, unresolved issues that I must face alone." The girl, who had been standing by the window, turned towards him, her expression softening. "Is there anything we can do to help?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, this is a journey I must undertake by myself. But perhaps in time I will find the answers I seek," the narrator said, a faint glimmer of hope in his voice. The athletic man, who had been leaning against the doorframe with a stern look, finally spoke. "Then we shall respect your wishes, but remember, you are not alone." As the narrator left the room, the others exchanged looks of empathy and understanding. They knew the road ahead would be difficult for him, but they also knew that sometimes one must walk the path of self-discovery alone to find true healing. The lost innocence. The frost-laden wind howled through the desolate streets as the protagonist trudged through the snow. His breath formed clouds of mist in the frigid air, and his eyes, a piercing blue, scanned the horizon for any sign of the young girl he had vowed to protect. "Where could she be?" he muttered to himself, his voice barely audible over the wind's mournful cry. As he rounded a corner, he spotted her, a small figure huddled against a crumbling wall, her once vibrant eyes now dull with despair. His heart clenched at the sight, and he quickened his pace. "Anna," he called out, his voice gentle yet urgent. "We need to move. It's not safe here." The girl looked up, her expression wary. "I can't," she whispered. "The warden, he's watching." The protagonist followed her gaze to see the warden, a ruthless enforcer of the old regime, known for his merciless pursuit of those who defied the fallen government's edicts. "Listen to me, Anna," the protagonist said, kneeling before her. "I've escaped his clutches before, and I'll do it again. We must leave now, or we'll be trapped." A memory flashed before his eyes, the day he found Anna, alone and frightened, in the aftermath of a brutal crackdown on dissenters. He remembered the promise he made to her dying parents to guard her with his life. Anna's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, placing her small, cold hand in his. Together, they set off, the protagonist leading the way with a resolve born from the haunting memories of a promise made amidst chaos. Their journey was fraught with peril. They passed a library, once a beacon of knowledge, now reduced to ashes and rubble, a stark reminder of the society that had crumbled under the weight of its own ignorance and fear. "Why do they hate us?" Anna asked one night as they huddled together for warmth. "Some people fear what they don't understand, Anna. And sometimes that fear turns to hate," the protagonist explained, his voice tinged with sorrow. "But we haven't done anything wrong," Anna protested, her voice small. "I know," the protagonist agreed, his voice firm. "And that's why we must keep going. There's a place for us, somewhere beyond this ice, where kindness and compassion still thrive." Anna looked up at him, hope flickering in her eyes. "Do you really believe that?" With a nod, he replied, "It's what drives us forward, Anna. Our hope is our strength." And so they continued on, their shared hope guiding them through a world that had lost its warmth to the relentless advance of the ice. The warden's game. The air was thick with tension as the protagonist, a military man with a steely gaze, was escorted through the opulent corridors of the high house. The guard's footsteps echoed ominously, a stark reminder of the power wielded within these walls. He was led into a grand room where the warden, a man of commanding presence, awaited him. "Ah, you've arrived," the warden said, his voice betraying no emotion. "I trust you understand the gravity of our situation." The protagonist nodded, his mind racing with thoughts of the young girl he was desperate to protect, and the political web he found himself entangled in. "I do, and I'm willing to help, but I need assurances. The girl's safety is non-negotiable." The warden's lips curled into a sly smile. "Of course, but first, let's discuss the matter of your cooperation. Our country's position is precarious, and we need allies. You have influence where it matters. Convince your government of our strategic value, and the girl will be under my personal protection." The protagonist's jaw clenched. "You're using her as a pawn in your political games. I won't stand for it." "Think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement," the warden countered. "Refuse, and I can't guarantee what might happen in these troubled times." The protagonist took a deep breath, weighing his limited options. "Fine. I'll do it. But I want to see the girl now, and I want a written agreement detailing her protection and the terms of my cooperation." The warden nodded. "Very well. You shall have your agreement." As the protagonist left the high house, he couldn't help but reflect on the stark contrast between the grandeur around him and the desolation that lay beyond these walls. It was a world of disparity, and he was caught in the middle. He had entered the warden's game, a game of manipulation and control, with the life of an innocent girl and the fate of nations hanging in the balance. The game was on, and he had to play it to win. He made a silent vow to ensure the girl's safety, no matter the cost. Through war's desolation. The icy wind howled through the broken windows of the dilapidated factory where John and Anna had taken refuge. The vast, shadowy space was littered with the remnants of a once thriving industry, now just a hollow shell of rusted machinery and debris. In a corner beneath the staircase, John sat with Anna, contemplating their next move. "Anna, we need to move before nightfall," John urged, his voice barely above a whisper. The girl nodded, her eyes reflecting a resilience born of too many hardships. As they ventured into the desolate streets, the echoes of war raged in the distance. Despite the urge to retreat, John knew they had to press on to find shelter and safety. "Where are we going?" Anna asked, gripping a tattered doll to her chest. "To a place untouched by this darkness," John replied, his certainty bolstering her spirits. Their path led them to unexpected encounters. Among the ruins, a stray dog, thin and wary, began to follow them. Anna, seeing a kindred spirit in his eyes, offered it a piece of their scarce food, and the dog, now named Shadow, became their silent guardian. "Why are we being followed?" Anna whispered, noticing figures moving stealthily in the distance. "Some are lost, seeking what they cannot find," John answered, his thoughts on the new companion at their side. Seeking shelter, they entered an old library, its walls lined with books that whispered tales of a world before the frost. Here, they met an old librarian, her eyes bright with the knowledge of the stories she guarded. "We mean you no harm," John declared, his stance relaxed but watchful. The librarian, peering at Anna, murmured, "She's just a child, isn't she?" "Yes, and she's the hope for a better tomorrow," John responded, his voice softening. They shared a meal with the librarian, who recounted legends of warmth and light. As the night deepened, John felt an unease creeping in. Quietly, they slipped away, Shadow leading them through the maze of bookshelves. Avoiding another confrontation, they navigated the city's labyrinth, their new ally guiding them through the safest paths. They found themselves in a secluded garden, the moon casting a serene glow over the forgotten beauty. "We'll find a way," John assured Anna, his resolve unwavering. "We'll find the light again." Together with Shadow at their side, they continued their journey through the remnants of a shattered world, A soldier, a child, and a dog, each a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. Their bond, forged in adversity, was a testament to the enduring spirit of life. The path of redemption. The biting cold nipped at his cheeks as the military man trudged through the snow, the weight of his past heavier than the pack on his back. The desolate landscape stretched before him, a canvas of white painted with the scars of war and the relentless advance of ice. He was a man on a mission that had cost him more than he could bear. "Where are you going?" a voice called out from the ruins of a nearby building. It was the secretary, her face a mask of concern and regret. "To the tower," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to see the warden." She hesitated, then nodded. "I'll take you there, but be careful. The path is treacherous, and the warden, he's not the man we thought he was." They walked in silence, the only sound the crunch of snow beneath their boots. The tower loomed ahead, a monolith against the gray sky. As they climbed the steep slope, the military man's resolve hardened. Inside the tower, the climb was no less daunting. The steps were precarious, and the lack of a parapet at the top left him exposed to the elements and to his own fears. But he pressed on, driven by a need for redemption that burned brighter than the cold. At the top, he found the warden, his presence commanding yet distant. "Why did you leave us?" the military man demanded, his voice raw with emotion. The warden looked away, his eyes empty. "I had to save myself. There's no saving this world." The military man's fists clenched. "You're wrong. There's always something worth saving." The warden shook his head. "You're a fool. But perhaps a fool is what we need right now." As the military man descended the tower, his thoughts were not of burdens lifted, but of the daunting task ahead. He set off into the forest, the branches intertwining above him like the complex web of his past. He was no longer trapped by indecision. He was free to choose his fate, free to continue the mission, one step at a time. Tragedies echo. The snowstorm howled like a beast as the soldier, known to us as John, trudged through the blinding white. The girl followed behind, her steps faltering. "Why do we keep going?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper against the roaring wind. John's eyes were fixed on the horizon that seemed to merge with the sky. "We must find shelter before nightfall," he said, his voice firm yet tinged with an unspoken fear. The girl stopped, her breath forming icy clouds. "I can't do this anymore," she sobbed, the tears freezing on her cheeks. John's face softened at the sight of her despair. "We're close to the town, just a bit further, and we'll be safe." The girl shook her head. "It's not just the cold. It's the war, the loss, the constant running. I'm so tired." John approached her, determination masking his own exhaustion. "It's hard, and you're scared, but we're almost there." As they neared the town, the sound of distant festivities reached their ears, a stark contrast to the desolation around them. The transition was abrupt, but the glow of lights and the murmur of voices promised a respite from their ordeal. "We made it," John said, relief in his voice. But as they entered the town, the girl collapsed, her body succumbing to the journey's toll. John rushed to her side, lifting her into his arms. "Stay with me," he pleaded, his voice breaking. But it was too late. The girl's breath had stilled, her fight against the relentless freeze over. John sat in the snow, holding her, the festivities a distant blur. He had strived to protect her, but in the end, he couldn't shield her from the tragedy that echoed through their lives, a reminder of the fragility of hope in a world succumbing to ice. As the snow continued to fall, John knew that the girl's death was a call to change. He stood up, her memory etched in his heart, and walked towards the town. its cobblestone streets and warm lights beckoning, ready to face whatever came next. The choice of fate. In the frostbitten world where war had painted every corner in shades of despair, the protagonist stood in the secure yet sterile office of the warden, a room untouched by the chaos outside. His worn uniform and haunted eyes were a stark contrast to the surroundings. "You have proven skills," the warden began, his voice smooth and calculating. "Skills that can be of great use. Your broadcasts, your words, they sway people. You could be a voice for us." The protagonist's mind raced. Aligning with the warden could mean a betrayal of his own beliefs. The promise of influence and safety was tempting, yet it did not align with his principles. "And what's in it for me?" he asked, voice hoarse with fatigue. "Beyond safety?" The warden leaned back. "There's someone upstairs, someone you've been trying to reach through all this chaos." Helping the warden would allow him to deliver his message personally, yet at what cost? The image of a past life flashed before his eyes, stirring a storm of memories. The protagonist glanced at the warden, then out the window, wrestling with the magnitude of his choice. "I can't abandon them," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "Not for personal gain." "You're choosing to stay in this dying world? For what? Honor? Duty?" The warden asked, his tone icy. "For them," the protagonist replied, gesturing towards the door, beyond which lay a world that still breathed, still fought. For every person still fighting out there, for every innocent trying to make it through another day. The warden scoffed. "Very well. I can't force you. But remember, this was your choice." Stepping out of the warden's office, the protagonist felt the weight of his decision like a mantle on his shoulders. A soldier, one of his former comrades, clapped him on the back, a silent show of support. They walked back into the chaos together, into a world that was cold and brutal, but still theirs. In his heart, the protagonist knew he had made the right choice. He could face the end with them, share in their struggles, and perhaps find a glimmer of redemption in the bonds forged in the darkest of times. The bonds of survival. The town square was alive with the sound of laughter and music. The protagonist, his face marked by recent events, entered the old library. There he found the girl reading a story to a group of children. Their eyes met, and without a word, she closed the book and stood up. The protagonist spoke. "I came for you." She smiled slightly, "Then stay. Help us make this a home." They joined the festivities, their shared experiences forging a bond of friendship and resilience.